Perfect Cherry Blossom, the 7th entry in the shmup series known as Touhou Project, or just Touhou. The main game consists of playing through 6 stages, each one with a boss at the end, all the while dodging the onslaught of bullets that are fired at you. For a new player, the primary goal is to reach the end of the game, but to achieve the true ending, you'll have to get to the end without using a continue. Once this is accomplished, it's fair for a casual to consider the game finished. But what if you wanted more? Touhou games offer extra stages and higher difficulties for the main game, where you can aim for the same goal of a 1 continue clear. But again, what if you wanted to go even further? The more you play, the better you get, and as a result, the bigger the challenge you want to take on. Maybe you want to beat the game without using your resources. Or maybe you want to do that, but also without getting hit even once. Survival isn't the only way to push yourself though, as there's another method of play that's obvious to see just by looking at the game screen, and that's playing through the game aiming for a high score. While this is simple to understand, actually achieving such runs is another story, with countless hours of practice put into your game of choice, be it in routing or just ironing out execution. To quote Donanpachi player Prometheus, "One thing I would like to stress is how much more fun STGs become when you play them for score instead of survival." He was certainly onto something when he said that, as if you looked at any shmup, you'd likely find a leaderboard of sorts for high scores. I say likely because, as per usual, I can't actually speak for every shmup in existence. However, I can speak for Touhou games. While the objective of score running is always the same, how far you want to push it depends on the player. Some runners aim for a score that they themselves can be satisfied with, or something that would cement them as one of the best. Others will aim even higher than that. They don't want to be considered one of the best. They want to be number 1, the best. Touhou is a series that has existed for 25 years now, so there's a lot of games to look at scores for, and each one has its own history to it. That's the key word here, history. A world record is the culmination of discovered strategies and hours of practice. And while finding said record is as easy as an online search, have you ever wondered how it reached that point, and how far back players had actively been trying for the gold? I became interested in it myself, so that's what I decided to look into, to see what strategies were found and when they had their star debut, and which ones became pivotal in obtaining a world record, as well as the players who tasted glory, along with the ones who paved the way for them with their hours of dedication towards the game. With all that said, this is the world record history of Touhou Youyoumu, Perfect Cherry Blossom. Perfect Cherry Blossom's full release was at the 64th Comiket on August 17, 2003, so it's nearly 2 decades old. It's pretty difficult to find gameplay videos in general around this time, and in Touhou's case, it's just impossible. Fortunately, Touhou games have a built-in system for this issue in the form of replays. Whenever you finish a run without using a continue, you'll be prompted to save a replay of your game. From here, you can take your replay file from the game's replay folder and upload it to the internet. And from there, others can download them and play them back in their own game. This solves the VOD issue to an extent, but there's something else to mention. PCB is broken up into multiple score categories, each main game difficulty, along with Extra and Phantasm. And within each, there are 6 shot types to choose from. This means there's 36 different categories in the game. This video will only be covering Sakuya B on Lunatic difficulty, as this is the highest scoring category in the game. So with that said, the first thing to do is find the oldest replay online, and that brings us to Royal Flare, a website where players can submit their replays, while also serving as a scoreboard for all Touhou games starting from EOSD. Conveniently, Royal Flare started keeping track of world record history itself sometime in 2010, and while it isn't up to date, it does contain a good amount of the game's earliest history, including the first submitted Lunatic run from July 29, 2004, a 2.2 billion with Sakuya B by Assapin. Assapin was one of the earliest top runners of PCB, and he had gotten the world record for Reimu B hard just a few months prior. so he turned his attention to Lunatic. Now before I can really begin with the run itself, it's important to understand how scoring works in the game. To start off, doing damage to enemies and grazing the bullets they fire at you. Grazing increases your score by 2,000 per graze, and a bullet can only be grazed once. However, lasers can be grazed the whole time they're active. Shooting enemies down rewards more score than just hitting them, and they'll drop items for you to grab. These items can be power, point, and cherry items. Power items increase your power, and are worth 10 points. When you reach max power, which is 128, all on-screen bullets will convert to star items, and power items will convert to cherry items. All power drops will be replaced with cherry items as well. More on cherry items later. Max power also allows you to use the point of collection line. This invisible line is about a fourth or fifth of the way down the screen. Its exact location is actually character dependent, and going across it magnets all items on screen to you. The importance of this is due to the way grabbing the other items works. Point items have a base value of 50,000, and the value decreases the farther down the screen you collect it. The point of collection line marks before where the value starts to drop, so items that are grabbed while above the line will give the highest value. You can also tell this by the color of the number upon collection being displayed in yellow text. Star items are created when on-screen bullets are cleared in some way, those ways being by obtaining full power, shooting down certain enemies, clearing boss patterns, and by bombing. These items have a value of 300, and it increases by 10 for every 40 graze you have, and all star items collected while a bomb is active give a flat 100. Bosses use special attacks known as spell cards. These patterns have bonuses that decrease in value over time. However, you can increase the value by grazing during the attack. This increase is based on your cherry, but it's only a part of the equation. I've put it on screen for those interested. You'll lose the bonus if you get hit or bomb at any point during the spell card. The starting value of the bonus is dependent on the spell card, and obtaining this bonus is referred to as a capture. This isn't the only bonus though, as there's also an enemy bullet bonus. This is granted when a full visible health bar is depleted, or by finishing a spell card. The more bullets on screen that were cleared when this happens, the greater the value. Now, for the most important part of scoring, the cherry system. In the bottom left corner of the screen, there are 3 values. The left is cherry, the right is cherry max, and the pink number above the left is cherry plus. Cherry value starts at 0, and once it passes 50,000, it will become the new highest value of point items. The cherry max is the max amount of cherry you can have. Cherry items will increase your cherry and cherry plus by 1,000, plus 100 for each spell card captured during the run. Star items increase the value by 20, and when grabbed while a bomb is active increases by 5. In Stage 6, boss clear star items are turned into cherry items, and are worth 100 as well as having a point value equal to what a star item would be. There's also a mini cherry item that increases the cherry value by 30. Shooting enemies also increases these values. However, shooting in focus mode, the mode where you can see your character's hitbox, will reduce this game by around 90%. Cherry value will decrease if you lose a life, use a bomb, or fail to complete a boss pattern in time. When the cherry plus value hits 50,000, you're granted a supernatural border. This border will last for around 9 seconds, can block a shot for you, and all items will magnet to you and give their highest value. Borders are required for increasing your cherry max. While a border is active, all bullets grazed will increase its value. It will give 80 per graze unfocused, and 30 per graze while focused. If a border times out on its own, it will increase your cherry max by 10,000, and give a point bonus equal to your current cherry times 10. All increases to the cherry max value also increase the cherry value. A border can also be dispelled early, and all bullets cleared with it will turn into small cherry items that will magnet to you. You won't receive the border bonus, and this also forfeits a spell card bonus if used during one of those. When your cherry hits the cherry max value, all cherry items will start acting like base point items, in that they'll be worth a maximum value of 50,000 and decrease in value the farther down the screen they're collected. Finally, at the end of each stage, there's the clear bonus. You'll receive points based on what stage you've cleared times 1 million, how many point items grabbed times 50,000, how many bullets grazed times 500, and your cherry max value times 10. I should clarify that the point item and Graze bonuses only count the amount gained within the stage itself, and the Graze bonus caps at 9,999 per stage. Each difficulty also offers a point multiplier, and a point penalty for starting with higher than the default lives. Stage 6 has bonuses for the amount of extra lives times 20 million, and remaining bombs in stock times 4 million. That covers everything about scoring, but there's still something important that hasn't been explained yet, and that is, why Sakuya B? Each character in the game has 2 unique traits to them, and each one has a different amount of starting bombs per life. Sakuya's traits are a larger Graze box, and a reduced death penalty to Cherry. Sakuya also starts with 4 bombs per life, the highest amount between the 3. Each character has 2 shot types to choose from, referred to as A and B. Each one has a different rate of Cherry increase per shot, and 2 bombs, one tied to focus, and the other to unfocused. Each bomb also has a different Cherry penalty to it. Sakuya B is tied for the 3rd highest increase in Cherry per shot, and is the 3rd lowest penalty for both her bombs. Those bombs in question are the biggest factor in this decision. Both of Sakuya's bombs freeze on-screen bullets while they're active, and when the bomb ends, all frozen bullets convert to star items. But because this doesn't happen until the bomb is considered inactive, you get full star item value. In the case of the focus bomb, the square Sakuya creates rubber bands towards her when she moves, and clears bullets within it. But for some reason, star items created in the square still give full point value even though the bomb is still considered active. However, it retains the 5 Cherry increase. These strengths shine in Lunatic due to the high amount of bullets her bombs can take advantage of, and is complemented by Lunatic having a 75% decrease in the Cherry penalty for bombing. Sakuya B's bombs are capable of producing a large amount of Cherry and Cherry Plus, which in turn causes more borders to further increase Cherry Max, allowing for Cherry to continue increasing, thus increasing the score value of just about everything in the game, making her route scoring potential much higher than all the other shot types. That was a lot of information to take in, so let me summarize. You gain score by shooting enemies and collecting the items that drop from them, grazing bullets and getting bonuses from bosses and stages, getting borders to increase the Cherry values, which in turn increases item values, as well as raise the gain on other bonuses. And Sakuya B is the best choice in Lunatic due to her ability to create many of these borders due to the nature of her bombs. It's an oversimplification, but it does cover how it works. But it doesn't necessarily cover how players utilize it in their runs. To better understand what I mean, let's finally take a look at Assapin's replay. Stage 1 is more about building your Cherry as soon as possible rather than raw score, since Cherry value is used for pretty much everything. It's worth noting here that your starting Cherry Max value is dependent on what difficulty you're on, with Lunatic starting at 300,000. He uses a bomb early on here for Cherry Plus. This will be the primary use of bombs. Bombs also magnet items to the player while they're active. However, their value is still dependent on your position, so he'll move towards the top of the screen to maximize the value of oncoming point items. Sakuya's shot is quite interesting. It has a fairly wide range and can be aimed. When Sakuya goes into focus, the purple knives will retain the angle they were at and stay that way until you leave focus. This allows for some interesting strategies for stages, but runners tend to stick unfocused as much as possible due to the rather severe decrease in Cherry gain while focused. You'll notice when he reaches the mid-boss that there's no bonus to her opening attack. These types of patterns are called non-spells, and don't have a spell bonus to them. He shoots her down to low HP, then waits for her to attack, and finishes the health bar right after to convert all the bullets to star items. This gives a good bullet bonus, but the main purpose is the Cherry Plus that comes from it. A large clear will be the aim for every pattern throughout the run. Before the spell card starts, he gets in a position under Chirno that lets him hit her with as many bullets as he can. This is known as shotgunning, and will be done a lot in the run. When his supernatural border activates, he'll stop shooting and focus entirely on unfocused grazing to take full advantage of the border, and while the timer is ticking down, the grazing is keeping the spell bonus incredibly steady the whole time. The other reason for this is because Cherry Plus doesn't go up during borders, so finishing off an attack, or shooting in general, while one is active loses Cherry Plus increase towards the next border. Once the border ends, he returns to shooting. This will be a common practice throughout the run, and assume it to be the case for every border unless specified otherwise. Another bomb is used just before the boss, likely to avoid losing the big P that fell near the corner. Starting the fight with Letty, he opts to delay clearing the first non as long as possible for Graze, and is careful not to forfeit the clear or time it out. This is known as milking. Lingering Cold fires a big ball with a tail of smaller ones at you that splits open. All these bullets are stacked on each other, so grazing the tail also grazes every bullet that splits off it. He makes great use of this with his border, then retreats to do the rest normally for a capture. Non 2 is delayed like the first, and max power will be obtained at the start. This is the point of the run where you want this to happen. The ghost-like thread that creates the other bullets has laser properties, so it can't be continuously grazed. And near the middle of the non, a bomb is used. Letty's final, table turning, is a consistent pattern, but Letty moves around during it, which changes the pattern's position. Once the border activates and the bonus is gotten, he captures the spell card. From this point on, there are plenty of sections throughout the stages where the optimal strat is just shoot down and get full value from point of collection. As such, I'll only be focusing on stage sections that utilize a bomb or pop a border. Stage 2's first border happens before a streaming section of green bullets. As such, he's only able to graze about half of it with the border active. He also gets an extra life here, as those are rewarded throughout the run when you collect certain amounts of point items. Mid-boss Chen's non is a blast of green balls, followed by rice bullets. It's cleared normally with no extensions. At the start of the spell card, Chen just doesn't shoot for 7 seconds, so he gets a decent amount of risk-free cherry. This increases his cherry enough to pop a border when the spell card actually starts. He continues to shoot while this border is active, but remains unfocused and captures the spell card like normal. During the last stage section, he gets a border, then stays in place as the group of fairies aims around you. Then the final group of fairies is aimed at you, and is dodged entirely with a single tap to the side. Boss Chen's initial attack is bombed, and from there, the non is done like normal, and gets a good clear. Seimon Daimon has Chen move in a star that fires bullets from the points, with a circle of blue in the center shooting as well. The spell card is done like normal, and after the border pops and he gets his border bonus, resumes shooting for the capture. The beginning of Non 2 has portions that are aimed, then Chen spews. Slight movement to graze the aim portions is done, and Chen is shot down like normal. Goho Tendo spins across the screen a few times, leaving bullets. Then she goes to the center and fires before resuming. Another border pops here, and it goes the same as the last few, bonus and all. After that, it's another capture. Chen's final, Kimontonko, is a constant barrage, where the light blue bullets are slow, while the green and blue bullets are fast. He dodges it well, while trying to remain unfocused as much as he can, and captures it beautifully. Stage 3's mid-boss arrives very early into the stage. Alice shoots a set of blue and red bullets, then green and yellow bullets that cross through each other. A border pops when the green set starts, and after the bonus is obtained, he delays the non for a bit, then clears in the last few seconds. After moving to the point of collection, a bomb is used. This is likely to collect items. Then the rest of the section is done like normal. A border activates at the end of the section, and it carries into the second mid-boss. Because of this, the border doesn't graze much, but he does still get the bonus. This attack is 4 waves of colored bullets, with the green and light blue set having more time between them. He clears the non with plenty of time still on the clock. Maiden's Bunraku has Alice firing a single bullet that turns into more bullets, and dolls that shoot bullets and lasers. The dolls can be shot down, and they drop items too, so he's aiming for those drops during the spell card. When a border pops, he continues to shoot as any item a doll drops will give him full value in border, and he doesn't have to worry about missing any due to the border's magnet. He takes a hit near the end of the spell card and loses the capture bonus, and cuts it close with a clear at 0 seconds on the timer. The next border happens near the end of the stage, and while there's not a lot to graze during it, he is getting a lot of value out of the dropped items from the enemies. Boss Alice opens with diagonal rice bullets, then shoots 2 sets of 2 waves of red bullets. He clears the non when the dolls come out of Alice, as they turn into cherry items this way. Orlean Dolls is similar to table turning, in that it's static, but dependent on boss movement, and it creates a ton of bullets. He gets a border near the start of the spell card, and after the bonus, uses a bomb, and he uses 2 more bombs after to get another border. This border, however, comes very late, so it's not possible to complete it before the timer runs out, meaning he has to clear while it's active, losing the Cherry Plus gain from the clear. This next non is broken. It lasts for 3 seconds, then automatically ends. White Russian Dolls has Alice call dolls down on the side of the screen to shoot. These dolls drop items. He follows the spawn, then moves towards the point of collection to bomb. An intentional death is done afterwards to refill bombs, one of which is used shortly after and leads to a border. Another bomb is used once the border ends, and focus is directed more so at Alice to finish off the spell card. Non 3 fires a rotating wave of blue, then red bullets that goes on for a while, and a border happens right at the start of it. The next part looks like the second non, but it actually works, and is done twice. He does it like normal and waits a bit to clear. Kyoto Dolls is a lot of bullets and tight dodging. A border pops here, and once again when the bonus is obtained, the spell card is captured with no issues. Alice's final, Horai Dolls, is, not really sure how to explain it. I guess 2 types of bullets and the smaller ones clump up? Regardless, it's captured with little issue, much like the last. If you're wondering why the Cherry Plus is so low going into stage 4, it's because Alice gave enough Cherry Plus on the clear for a border, so it happened, and instantly ended. It still gave the bonus, but that's all he got out of it. In a similar fashion, he gets a border at the end of the first section, and the screen is empty just about the entire duration. The next border pops during a section of enemies that shoot more when shot down, and he moves in a way to lead the revenge bullets while grazing the entirety of them with his border. He uses a bomb on the end of this section for more Cherry Plus going into the mid-boss. Lily White fires 4 sets of aim bullets mixed with rice. A border pops during the first one, and small movements are done to keep the aim shots grouped. An unintentional death right after the border breaks, and while he tries to collect the power, Lily starts her aim shots again, and his movement makes them super messy, so he uses a focus bomb to get out of it. The extra Lily time starts the next section off cycle, and bombs early into it. He uses another bomb to get a border at the revenge bullets that are similar to the ones he got a border on before the mid. There's a stage section where 2 sets of 2 fairies on the left and right that fire aimed clutter at you. He goes up and around the blue ones to take out 6 out of 8. He gets a border at the end and heads back to the left for the next set. These sets fire more, and he goes across the bottom while his border is active, but returns to the top like before for the last set, for another total of 6 out of 8. In other words, he shoots down 12 out of 16 fairies here. Stage 4 actually has 3 bosses, and which one you start the fight against is dependent on your character. For Sakuya, the start is against Merlin. All of her bullets are aimed, and the squiggle ghosts are like lasers. He uses a focus bomb during the non, and moves the square towards Merlin so it goes through her and comes back. Focus bombs net the same amount of Cherry Plus, but on certain patterns can get a higher raw score. He uses another bomb later and gets a border, and shortly after it ends, another focus bomb is used, only this one is aimed quite differently. Non 2 is aimed lasers and bullets. The idea and method to dodge doesn't change, and is done quickly. Live Poltergeist is a lot of aim sets, with some extra bullets moving around. He makes good use of the border that pops here. All 3 bosses share a health bar, but the one you deal the most damage to is the one you'll have to fight for the next non and spell card, and which side of the screen they're on is based on your character. He opts to fight Lyrica, the one on the right, and captures the spell card too. Lyrica's non 3 is aimed. He takes her to low HP and bombs for more Cherry Plus. He's a little short, so he tries to hit her with a few shots to nudge into border, and succeeds, and proceeds to milk the rest of the non. Divine Performance is a showy display of crossing waves of bullets. He gets extra graze from the red and blue bullets while they're circling, and captures the spell card easily. Stygian Riverside brings all 3 back into the attack, and once again they share a health bar. The sister in the middle, Lunasa, fires bullets that cycle through the colors of a rainbow, starting with yellow. The other sisters move around swinging lasers, and the bullets they hit are redirected. The spell card is captured with no issue, and moves on to the final. The girls make a triangle with lasers sticking out, and the bullets in the center get flung around by those lasers. A border activates, but an unfortunate break near its end costs him both bonuses. Stage 5 is much shorter than the previous, and when done well, barely has any bullets to dodge. The first border happens during a cross of red and blue bullets. The blue ones are aimed, and the red ones are static. He gets a border for the last section before the mid-boss, but as there's only 3 enemies here, there's not much to be gained. He tries to squeeze some extra Graze off the leaving bullets, but ends up breaking his border just before getting the bonus. When the mid-boss shows up, he positions himself in the top corner. Youyouumu's opening attack is misdirected quite heavily this way, and it's done again for the following. Afterwards is 4 slashes, with the blue ones being aimed at you and the red around you. He clears shortly after the slashes. Hungry King's sword is a slash from right to left repeating, creating bullets. Youyoumu causes everything to slow down whilst he prepares to slash again. He follows her first few slashes, then waits on one side, but takes a hit before she slashes again. He gets a border as soon as he finishes her off, and gets to use it for the streaming section following. He starts shooting on the final section, but after a few seconds bombs for more Cherry Plus, and to not miss any of the items, which finishes off the stage. Youyouumu's first non is similar to the mids, but with more bullets, and it's misdirected in the same fashion. He gets a border during the slashes, and finishes it amidst the opener, then focus bombs. This was likely for survival more than score. Hell God's sword is similar to Hungry King's sword, a slash left and right causing bullets, but this time Youyoumu is higher up the screen. He gets a border during the second slash, and captures the spell card on the third, but was just shy of finishing the border, so he lost out on the Cherry Plus from the clear. Non 2 is 3 sets of bullets aimed around you, and some bendy knives aimed at you during the third set. He captures it quickly and moves on to the next spell card. Asura's sword has Youyoumu suction the passing bullets, then slashes to fire them at you. He makes quick work of it for a capture. Human God's sword starts with a slash at the bottom that causes rising bullets while Youyoumu fires at you. He gets a border near the start and makes small movements to graze the red bullets while being mindful of the ones behind. He does this all the way to a capture. Youyouumu's final, Heaven God's sword, is an array of bullets that slow down when Youyoumu prepares to slash. It's captured quickly, with no issue. Stage 6 is one section, a mid-boss, then the final boss. That one section has a few names, some less flattering than others, and I'll be referring to it as Chaos. He gets a border during it and attempts to survive, but gets hit near the end. It's hard to see through all the yellow text. Youyoumu returns with a similar non to her previous openers. This one can't be misdirected like those though. Six Realms sword looks like it slows down, but the speed doesn't actually change, only the visuals. A border is gotten at the beginning and waited out, and then the spell card is captured normally. Yusuke begins with combinations of rice and ball bullets. The first 2 waves come one at a time, then the next 4 are back to back. Once she gets to low HP, a border activates, and when it's done, he waits for the back-to-back waves to clear. Losing Hometown is a fan of lasers with sets of bullets coming from the left and right. Just like before, he gets a border and delays, then goes about capturing the spell card like normal. Non 2 has Yusuke open a large fan behind her, then starts shooting aimed donuts. He starts to the left and moves slowly right to avoid the big bullets, and continues shooting even when a border activates. He does this as the clear from this non is going to give him a border at the start of the next spell card regardless. Shooting the fan does deal damage to Yusuke, but not as much as hitting her directly. Right away on Deadly Dance, he runs up to Yusuke and attempts a strat to spin around her, but is quickly shot down. The big bullets are aimed and the butterflies are consistent. After scooping up the drop power, he pops a border and remains near the bottom to finish the border, as well as the spell card without any more issues. Non 3 is more aimed donuts, but combined with bendy knives. Another border that survived, but he puts himself in the corner shortly after and uses a focus bomb to escape. Butterfly Delusion fires a ghost ring that follows you and explodes into butterflies while Yusuke shoots. He gets close to the center of the ring before it explodes for Graze, and completes the border he got at the start while still shooting for a capture. Non 4 is butterflies and arrowheads. The arrowheads are aimed either at or around you. Another border, another bonus, then the next spell card. Hirokawa Butterfly is a static set, then 4 waves of butterflies aimed at you. He gets a border during it. and milks the Graze all the way up to the last second. As you probably figured out, this spell card is big for Graze, with Assapin getting over 3,500 Graze alone, and the spell card bonus being worth 62 million. He gets a border with the clear, and moves to the top of the screen to start the next spell card, Sumizome. He waits for the initial donut burst and follows it, then waits for the border to end before he begins shooting. Youyoumu fires partially aimed butterflies and rice bullets while occasionally firing more donut bursts. This spell card is shot down entirely unfocused, with focus only being used to move. This is because it's barely possible to get a border from 0 with only unfocused shooting. He accomplishes this and captures once the border ends. The Cherry Plus from the clear here also grants enough for another border instantly. This border is a free bonus as there's nothing between its activation and ending, but it ends right at the start of the final, Resurrection Butterfly. Lasers, a burst of butterflies, then angled red butterflies ending with donuts, then repeat. This is a timeout spell, which means it's cleared when the time runs out. For Lunatic, that's 66 seconds. He does a pattern of bombing on the red butterflies, then getting a border bonus, then bombing the red butterflies again. He seemingly misses his third bomb and gets hit, but bombs when he comes back and resumes the pattern. The final bomb grants one final border that ends when the game pulls up his final stage bonus. That was a lot of information, but it's important to understand this run as it serves as the foundation for all future runs. Overall, Assapin's run was a solid Lunatic run, with plenty of captures and not too many deaths. He knew where he wanted to clear patterns to maximize Cherry Plus gain, how to play when he got a border, and where a bomb would net him high Cherry Plus for said borders. Of course, it wasn't perfect. A couple unintentional hits, survival bombs, rough utilization of other bombs, and loss of Cherry Plus due to some clears with a border still active. The most noticeable issue, however, was Assapin's lack of grazing, as he opted to clear most patterns fast, and only stalled around 3 of them for Graze. It was at the time a great run with plenty of areas to improve on, and as it turns out, it didn't take that long for someone to do just that. Sometime later in the same year, the winner of the Lunatic category for a competition of scores known as Lunablade's PCB Score Trials would emerge as the new world record, a 2.54 billion by the player Gil. Gil wasn't really a score runner, and was mostly known for challenge runs. To see him beat Assapin's record by 300 million was certainly unexpected. This record would hold for over a year until October 2nd, 2005, where Assapin reclaimed the world record with his 2.56 billion. What about Gil's run? Well, Gil had fallen into controversy as players started taking notes of his strange movements in his replays, leading to the belief that his runs were cheated. The accusations were never disproven, and Gil disappeared shortly afterwards. Nowadays, Gil's runs are regarded as illegitimate, so I see no reason to look at his replay. The only reason I'm mentioning it at all is because there was a point in time where it was considered legitimate. Enough about him though, on to Assapin's new run. Stage 1 is mostly a matter of better gameplay. Bombs are used in the same sections, but with better timing, and he picks up just a bit more Graze in each area. Stage 2's first border is in the same spot, but this time he avoids the point of collection, and waits for the cherry item to fall onto him. This gives him the border, full item value, and starts it later into the streaming, so he can take it through the whole section, and a bit into the next. You can see here he gets out of the line of fire unscathed after his border ends, and that's due to something I haven't mentioned yet. When a border ends, you're granted about half a second of invincibility, which is taken advantage of to clear out of almost certain death. This invincibility protects spell card bonuses too. Chen's first non is done without a bomb, but now the spell card is bombed twice. This is done to set up a border for the next non. He takes an intentional death to fill up on bombs, and even uses the invincibility to graze a clump of bullets. Goho can't get a border now, but he does milk it for longer. Himontonko gets a border now, and afterwards 2 bombs are used, the first unfocused, and the second focused. The end of stage 2 sets his Cherry Plus up to get a border from the beginning, and he waits to activate it as long as he can. Alice comes down, and he now spins around the red and blue waves. After his border, he bombs twice, and these bombs let him get another border near the end. This border finishes right at the end, so to get the Cherry Plus from the clear, he has to finish on 0 seconds. A border comes a little later on during the second encounter, and he spends some more time on the attack. Bunraku has done the same, but this time it's a capture. The boss opener has a seemingly unintentional death, but with no bombs and no huge penalty for it, combined with Alice's dolls giving him his power back on the clear, it isn't a major issue. Orlean dolls is one less bomb and border than before, but this means he doesn't lose Cherry Plus on the clear for the next non. The initial bomb is a waste though, as he was only a few seconds of shooting away from a border anyways. The border activates on the broken non, and he follows the rim of the wave for Graze. White Russian dolls is one less bomb and no hits, but he ends up timing the spell card out, which cuts his cherry by 25%, and gives nothing but a few items that drop from the dolls. He refills on non 3 and bombs to a border, then bombs again after the bonus. Kyoto Dolls gets a border early into it, but he gets hit and breaks it, losing both bonuses. Hodai Doll is captured like before, and the clear doesn't pop a border on the stage end. Stage 4 opener uses a bomb a few waves in and gets a border out of it. He then moves to the bottom of the screen and starts tap streaming the rest of the section. Everything up to Lily is about the same, but no bomb was used in the final section leading up to her. Lily herself is much better, but he does border break almost instantly. He bombs the section after Lily and gets a border that he breaks himself, and ends up bombing once more afterwards to get another border near the end of the section. No bombs or borders on Merlin Non 1, but the border comes early into Non 2. Afterwards a bomb is used, and then an intentional death to refill bombs. Lyrica is chosen again for Non 3, and this time a border comes early. He doesn't use a bomb at any point during the Non either. Divine Performance is bombed early, and it causes a border. 2 more bombs are used after, and those lead to another border, which is broken manually, and then a 4th bomb, which leads to a 3rd border. However, it's so late into the spell card that he can't get the border bonus before finishing it off. He doesn't get a border on Stygian Riverside, but he does still get one on the final, and this time, it's a capture. Stage 5 goes the same way up to the mid-boss. This time around, his Cherry Plus is just shy of border, so he can get it during the fight instead of before. He gets the border during the slashes and completes it for the bonus. Hungry King's sword is captured this time, and he sets up to graze the next section, where he squeezes between the shots instead of to the side, and border breaks during it, which brings his Cherry Plus close to another border. When he gets that border, he breaks it immediately, and moves upwards for the rest of the item drops. He ends up taking a hit during Hell God's sword, and opts for a bomb after, which causes a border that he does manage to get the bonus on. Asura's sword isn't done any different, but he gets a border at the start of it. His border for Human God sword comes later than last time, but his Cherry Plus isn't that far from what it was before the final. Stage 6 Chaos goes like last time, but the border break is intentional, and results in more Cherry Plus than before. This lets him get a border during the mid-non slashes. He ends up getting a border from clearing 6 Realms sword, which only amounts to a border bonus. No border on the first non, and the clear results in an early border for the first spell card. Non 2 clear lets him get a border at the start of Deadly Dance, and he makes 2 successful spins around Youyoumu. Once the border ends, he returns to the bottom of the screen to capture the spell. Non 3 is about the same, but he avoids using a bomb this time. Butterfly Delusion isn't too different either, but the grazing is significantly better and done for longer, resulting in around 2,000 more graze than last time. He takes a hit on the first set of red butterflies during the final, and bombs to recover his power with the items. Afterwards, he follows a similar pattern as last time, but instead of finishing with a border, the finals clear gives him one last border. This run was certainly an improvement overall, with some new strategies used and others from before being executed properly. Some of the most noticeable differences were the first border of Stage 2, along with some of Chen's spell cards being bombed, Alice's first non at the start of Stage 3, the Graze method in Stage 4's opening section, no major Lily disaster, the last section in Stage 5 before the boss, successfully pulling off the spin strat for Deadly Dance that he failed last time, and the extended graze of Butterfly Delusion in Stage 6. There was a lot more grazing this time around in general, less survival bombs, better use of resources in the early game for point item value for late game, and only one clear with a border still active. Of course, there were some problems. White Russian dolls ended up timing out. Then he broke the border during Kyoto dolls. During the Stage 6 final, he got hit near the beginning with a stock of 4. It's possible that he intended to capture it and finish with 8 lives and 4 bombs for the stage bonus, but after getting hit, he decided it was better to play it safe, as 1 life is equal to 5 bombs for the bonus. It's hard to say he pulled off every section better than last time, but at least you can tell that this was the case for the majority of the run. 2005 had come to an end, and 2006 was a quiet year for the category. Assapin had started focusing on Imperishable Night, and other runners were playing other categories. In fact, Sakuya B was the only shot type in Lunatic to not get a new world record in this year. Assapin's run was hard to beat, and it was becoming more and more obvious that PCB's available practice options weren't good enough. See, PCB's practice mode lets you choose a stage, then gives you 8 lives and bombs. Starting at the beginning of the stage each time you wanted to practice a section is certainly annoying, but not where the real issue was. It wasn't possible to alter any of your cherry values. You started every stage with nothing. This made practicing border strats impractical at best, and just impossible at worst. This meant the best way to practice anything related to borders was by starting a run, and the best way to get your values to where you wanted them was by playing up to that point as if it was a real attempt. Fortunately, this inefficient style of practice came to an end. A player known as Let had created a better method with the use of a program called SpoilerAL. By using his custom configuration file, or SSG file, you could alter values within the game, allowing players to practice individual sections per stage and editing certain values, notably the Cherry Plus and the number of spell cards captured. There were a few other SSGs created later on with differing features, and are still used to this day. But the important thing here is that starting from 2006, there was a much more efficient method of practice. The question now was, how much longer could Assapin's record hold up against this new age of convenience? Well, not too much longer, as on January 11, 2007, a new record had been set. A 2.9 billion by the player known as Hasega. A 400 million increase over Assapin's run. He didn't just beat the record, he crushed it. Remember how I said that the 5 other Lunatic categories had seen a new world record in 2006? Well, Hasega was responsible for 4 of them. Seems he was on a mission to hold the record in each Lunatic category, and Sakuya B had become his next target. But what did he do that gave him such a lead over the previous record? Stage 1 isn't very different, but the amount of bombs used has reduced to 1, the one used before the mid-boss. Stage 2 is the same route as well up to Chen's second non, where the 2 bombs he saved from Stage 1 are used before taking the hit to refill, then one last bomb. This lets him get a border during the next spell card instead of the final. For the final itself, it's captured almost entirely unfocused. Stage 3 is where the differences begin to show, and it starts at the second mid-boss. When he gets his border, he orbits around Alice's head. The border lasts for a full set of the non, and he returns to the bottom of the screen after the bonus is obtained. He uses his last bomb a bit before moving on to the spell card. He takes an intentional hit right before the boss to refill his bombs for the fight, one of which is used midway into the fight. This focus bomb is mainly used for its invincibility, where he runs towards the center of the upcoming wave, as the bullets don't fully reach the center, letting him graze the majority of the circle. He uses one more bomb near the end, and clears on 0 seconds. He tries to capture Orleans dolls, but gets hit in the last few seconds. This not only costs the capture, but loses a lot of bullets for the clear. However, the max power does recover some of the lost Cherry Plus. White Russian gets a border early on. Then afterwards, 2 bombs are used to get another border before finally clearing. Non 3 uses 2 bombs in the same spots, but the Graze during the border is more aggressive. He also takes a hit for another refill before the next spell card. Kyoto Dolls doesn't border break and is captured, and a border activates during the final, where afterwards a bomb is used to set up Cherry Plus. Stage 3 ending with a bomb, 7 spell card captures, and high Cherry Plus is important, as it allows him to do the Stage 4 route, starting with a certain strat right out the gate. This strat, simply known as the Stage 4 opener. So what just happened? To start, he uses a focus bomb and keeps it at the bottom, then moves upwards through the first wave, and by the time of the second wave, his bomb ends and his border activates. He streams this wave and the next two, and when the fifth wave arrives, he breaks the border. The cherry he gets back from the break is enough to grant another border immediately, which he carries to the rest of the pellet waves, and then breaks during the first set of the bigger blue bullets. Once again, a border pops, and he repeats the process again, and a fourth border comes out of it, and this one he carries out of the section for the bonus. 4 borders, and even though 3 of them don't get a bonus, they do get a substantial amount of Graze. For comparison, Assapin's Strat got an increase of 39,000 cherry max here. Hasega had gotten 79,000. It's possible this strat existed back when Assapin had gotten his world record, but he didn't have high enough cherry plus, and due to its setup requirements and lack of practice options, it's also possible he didn't intend on trying at that run to begin with. The Stage 4 opener was at least known about prior to SpoilerAL, as Let cited this particular strat as the main reason for making his SSG. That's enough for now though, back to Hasega's run. At the last section before Lily, he bombs to create a better route for items, and builds Cherry Plus to get a border at the start of the Lily fight. He keeps this border bonus too. A bomb is used at the start of the following section, and it gets a border. After a couple waves, he breaks it, and the returning Cherry Plus is enough for another border. He keeps this border for the bonus, and bombs right after, and then combined with some items and shooting gets him a third border at the end of the section. For the aimed blue and red fairies, he starts left but moves to catch each fairy as it comes down, instead of focusing on one side. The border happens at the last set, and the movement for that set is the same. This new method for the other 3 waves lets players shoot down 15 of the 16 fairies, but he did miss a blue one, so he finished with 14. Divine Performance avoids a border break, and no bombs are used afterwards. This causes a border during the next spell card, instead of the final. Stage 5 gets to the mid-boss and grazes much closer to Youyoumu, but ends up border breaking during it. The section following the mid isn't grazed from the center, and instead along the side. This not only keeps the border bonus, but he also manages to graze more than Assapin. The final section uses a bomb now partway into it, instead of the border break strat from before. Hell God's Sword is captured this time, and the clear pops a border right away for the second non. Much like the mid non, he grazes much closer to the source, and after the bonus, an intentional hit to refill bombs, 2 of which are used during the non to get a second border, which is once again cleared for a bonus. Stage 6 border breaks near the end of Chaos, but ends up getting his next border right before the mid, so it cancels to the bonus instantly. He bombs the non, which sets the Cherry Plus to give a border early into 6 Realm Sword. This also means the clear doesn't give a border to cancel before Youyoumu. He gets a border during her first non, while still getting enough Cherry Plus from the clear to start the first spell card with a border. Deadly Dance starts with a spin once more, and he continues to spin around Youyoumu for the entirety of the spell card. This results in almost 4 times the Graze that only 2 spins had gotten. Resurrection Butterfly has an aggressive strat, and makes an effort to max value the items that are dropping. He ends up breaking his third border, 3 seconds before the capture, to finish off the run. This was an incredible run, and was the first world record to showcase the Stage 4 opener. The border and stage routing was becoming well optimized in various places, most notably in the early game with Stage 1 and 2, and Hasega displayed great skill in his execution of these routes, his implementation of different strats throughout the run, and his more aggressive grazing. Hasega made less mistakes in comparison too, with the main ones being the hit during Orleans and Resurrection Butterfly. That hit during Resurrection Butterfly was quite a heartbreaker though, as if it hadn't happened, this run would have been the first ever to hit the 3 billion mark. So now the record stood just 20 million short of 3 billion, and it looked like the only way anyone was going to beat it was to clean up the few areas Hasega made mistakes on top of executing all of his strats. Hasega had continued towards his goal of lunatic records, and on March 6th the same year, with his new record for Marissa A, he had held all 6 lunatic category world records at the same time. Months passed, and no new changes for Sakuya. Mountain of Faith had released, and Assapin had started focusing on that, and Hasega had become inactive after achieving his goal. In other words, the only two runners to hold the world record for the category were no longer playing the game. The months kept going until a whole year had passed, and still they kept going. Finally, after nearly 2 years of silence, someone had put some life into the category. But with the previous record holders seemingly retired, who was it? His name was HS Staff. HS Staff started around the same time as Assapin, and is responsible for many of the strats used in PCB score runs. He was more active in other categories, like normal and hard difficulty, and really took off in 2007 and 2008, constantly competing with ISO, a well-known score runner of various shmups, who went by the alias ZNA Chairman or Kagamin for PCB scoring. These two continued to set records in various categories, and by the end of summer 2008, almost every category's record was held by one of them, the exceptions being all of Easy Mode, and of course, Sakuya B Lunatic. HS started dedicating his time into taking down Hasega's last remaining record, and after only a few months, he did just that. He used the same route for Stage 1 and 2, but had better grazing for both. The first difference is that the Stage 2 boss, where after the refill on Non 2, he refrained from using another bomb. He instead uses the bomb during Chen's final. This does set up his Cherry Plus for a border at the start of Stage 3, but forfeited the bonus. Unfortunately, that border gets broken before he can spin the red set, costing him his bonus and the graze that would have come. Boss Alice Non 1 is bomb to a border, then a bomb afterwards, but HS bombs right away, and he doesn't use either bomb to try for the safe spot within the circle. Orleans is bombed twice, and a refill is done as well. He doesn't miss a good clear, and gets a border for Non 2. White Russian uses 4 bombs to get 2 borders, and takes a seemingly unintentional hit right at the end. However, the dolls do come out in time to reclaim some Cherry Plus from the full power. Kyoto Dolls is bombed at the start, and after the border runs out, he ends up getting hit. He exits Stage 3 with only 6 spell card captures, which does make the Stage 4 route significantly harder due to lower cherry item value, but not impossible. Stage 4 opener is done like before, with a small change in location to the second break, and this time a bomb is used before the last border. This strat was found by HS himself, and it lets him stall the border a bit through the title card to get more out of it from the upcoming section. He gets the border at Lily and intentionally breaks it before it finishes. The following section gets 3 borders again, but because he's missing a bomb, he intentionally breaks the second one to get enough Cherry Plus for the third. He gets the 15 fairies, but ends up border breaking at the end of the section. He uses the bomb from the last fairy on Merlin's first Non, and gets a border out of it. He refills on Non 2 and doesn't use any bombs, and no border is gained during this Non. Stage 5 mid gets the border, and it isn't broken. The strat for the post mid is the same, but HS has a noticeably weaker graze, almost 400 less than Hasega managed. He takes a hit to Hell God's Sword, but is still able to start Non 2 with a border, and the 2 bombs into another border is done the same. He gets some bad RNG during Heaven God's Sword and bombs out. He then follows up with another bomb for a border. This was likely just because he had already lost the capture bonus from the first bomb. He takes a refill before Chaos truly begins, and uses the invincibility to get full power past the point of collection, take in the converted cherry, and get his border for the section proper. This was likely his plan from the start, so he opted to make use of the extra bombs on Youyoumu's final instead of losing them here. This border is broken, and his Cherry Plus is low enough to border during the mid, instead of before. Yuuyuko Non 1 still gets a border, but he has to bomb once to get it. Resurrection Butterfly features a new strat, where HS uses 2 bombs to get a border, then times a break around the third wave with the red butterflies. That break, combined with the items he point of collections for, grants a new border immediately, and he continues to chain breaks in this way up to the last border. After that final border from the clear, his score comes to 2.99 billion. This run was very similar in route to Hasega's, with some improvements through new strats, notably the Stage 4 opener border stall, border break chaining from Lily through the following section, the intentional hit during Chaos, and border break chaining through Resurrection Butterfly. HS had a stronger early game, and although there were some hiccups in Stage 5, With the weak post mid Graze and hit to Hell God's Sword, he did avoid the mistakes Hasega made. However, Stage 5 wasn't really the issue. It's been a common element so far that every run suffers from some sort of mistake in Stage 3, but Alice was never as mean to others as she was to HS. The border break to the first mid-non was definitely not planned, and in particular, the hit on Kyoto dolls more or less forced HS into Stage 4 with lower than the comfortable amount of spell card captures. Despite that, his Stage 4 was one of his strongest stages during the run. This run may not have been able to breach 3 billion, but the changes HS implemented really laid the groundwork for it. Thing is, Hasega wasn't terribly far from this milestone either, and it took 18 months before his record was beaten, and even then it wasn't enough. So how long would it be before someone showed up to beat HS? Months? Years? Well, as it turns out, it only took a single week. 3 billion. HS had hit the milestone, and became the first player to hit such a grand number. The route he used was the same as before, but with some better sections. Stage 3 in particular had everything HS wanted go as planned. From this, it becomes clear that he had planned on entering Stage 4 with only 6 spell captures from the start. For borders, he gets one at the end of Orleans dolls instead of during Non 2. He refills on White Russian dolls, and the bomb and border count is the same. The main difference is getting a border before the 4th bomb means that he's able to get a border at the start of Non 3. Up to the hit on Kyoto dolls, the amount of resources used was the same, but he got much more out of them this time around. Stage 5 avoids taking a hit to Hell God's Sword, and ends up using an extra bomb during Non 2. This shifts the border locations a bit from last time, but doesn't make too much of a difference. Stage 6 goes about the same, and the only difference is at Resurrection Butterfly, starting higher up the screen to begin the border chaining, and only needing 1 bomb to get it going. It was a near perfect run, but still had some small hiccups. A better, but still weak Graze on the post midsection in Stage 5. This wasn't terribly costly, but the main trouble showed in what had been his strongest stage last time, Stage 4. Everything went well up to Lily. Then he missed the border chain in the following section, causing him to have to grab some items to activate it, costing some border Graze and item value. And he missed a fairy in the second last section. During Merlin's Non 1, he has a poorly timed bomb, and the border he does get is broken close to its end. He also shoots Merlin down right after, and since the border break cleared the screen, he doesn't get much of anything from the clear. The biggest loss was during Live Poltergeist, where after the border finishes, he gets hit, losing the capture bonus and a full stock of bombs. The capture bonus increases through grazing, and this spell card is one of the highest grazes throughout the run, so losing that bonus, along with the value of the lost life, effectively cost HS around 50 million alone. That said, it was the only major mistake in the entire run, and it was still enough to crack 3 billion. HS had made history with this run, and afterwards he started playing other categories again to claim more records. At the beginning of November, HS took a bit of a break from runs, and he returned at the end of the month to reclaim 7 of the 8 records lost during that time. By the end of the year, however, HS truly did go on hiatus, and for the next 18 months, he would submit runs randomly to Royal Flair. The scoreboard was still mostly dominated by him, but his old rival ISO was still active, and kept it competitive in certain categories. Through this entire period, HS's 3 billion with Sakuya B was still standing strong, so the category didn't see much of a change the entire time. HS would properly return to the scoreboard sometime in June of 2010, and much like before, he began setting new records all over. Honestly, how much HS contributed to every single category could be a video of its own, so while I can't even begin to cover it all here, understand that calling him a big part of PCB's history is more than accurate. HS didn't spend as much time in Lunatic as he did other categories, but he was still there, and on September 1st, he made an improvement to the Sakuya B record by roughly 50 million points. Quite a familiar value, huh? Well, it's simply a coincidence, I promise. This run implemented some new strats and better grazes. In particular, a new and consistent graze on table turning, and higher grazes from Stage 5 post midsection, and Yuiko's Butterfly Delusion. 3 bombs on Non-1 to get 2 borders out of it, a new route for Hirokawa that gets him almost 4,000 Graze alone, and capturing Resurrection Butterfly. This capture makes use of the point of collection to get 3 borders throughout. It's similar in idea to the bomb and border break chaining, but riskier, and in turn, more rewarding, as his capture bonus comes out to 30 million. The run didn't have any major mistakes, but it had a handful of smaller ones, and had to use quite a few backups starting from stage 3. He had taken a hit too early in the post-mid section, which made his cherry plus low going into the boss. This resulted in 3 bombs on Non-1 and a capture of Orleans. Following that, another break during Kyoto Dolls. He falls short of border at the end of the stage 4 opener, and has to get it midway into the next section. He also has to break it to get his cherry plus back on track. The break to Kyoto Dolls gives an extra bomb, and he uses it during Merlin's Non-1. He breaks the granite border by accident, and gets hit shortly after again as well. This results in no full power cancel on Non-3, so he has to use 2 bombs during it. Now he doesn't have enough bombs for 2 borders on Divine Performance, so it's a capture. This results in borders during the next 2 spell cards, and an extra bomb going into stage 5. The border from the final actually comes from the clear, and while this usually results in a loss, the extra bomb is used to get the border in stage 5, where he did last time anyways. Unfortunately, he unintentionally breaks it instantly. This break makes his next border come before the mid, instead of during it. He takes a hit during Hungry King's Sword, which he ends up treating as his refill, so he doesn't take a death to Non-2, and captures everything after. Despite these unintentional breaks, and even the hit to stage 5 mid, all he really lost was a few borders. That's still not what you want, but it's better than a raw 50 million going up in smoke. HS's knowledge and execution of his backups were on full display, and it netted him a nice improvement to the record as a whole. And it didn't take very long for another improvement this time either. Just 4 days later, and HS had once again improved the record by a rather modest 5 million. Once again, the route used is the same. Despite the rather small difference in final score, the run ended up with a handful of changes. A border break on Goho forces him to capture the final. He takes a hit during the second Alice mid, which results in the same backup used last time, but he does avoid breaking to Kyoto Dolls. Stage 4 is mostly successful, but gets hit after the border against Lily, and a fairy is missed in the post-mid section. The boss looks mostly the same as well, up until the end where he takes a hit to the final, and bombs afterwards. Stage 5 avoids a break on the first border, and only has 1 bomb to use for the boss's second non. Stage 6 breaks during Resurrection Butterfly, so he uses his final bomb and an intentional break to get to the rest of it. He avoided the breaks from last time, but found them in new spots, these spots being during spell cards that he very much wanted to capture. The other mistakes resulted in similar backups as last time, but the Resurrection Butterfly break was quite costly. The rest of the run was still enough to make up for this, and even if the difference was only 5 million, it was still a new world record. HS continued as he had with other categories. He had even started submitting them under the names ES Staff and NS Staff when submitting for easy and normal categories respectively. 2010 passed, and come early 2011, HS once again started focusing on Lunatic. On February 26th, HS had improved his record once more by 26 million, and improved it again by 8 million on March 7th, but no replays exist of these runs. The only record of their existences is a screenshot from HS's in-game scoreboard. This actually brings up one of the downsides to replays. It is just as easy to delete your replay as it is to upload it. Players have a tendency to delete old PBs, or just not upload their runs because they're not satisfied with them. Because of this, it's actually pretty difficult to tell just how much someone was grinding a category, and if it wasn't for Royal Flair archiving record history itself, almost everything I've touched on at this point wouldn't still exist. 2011 might have been slow for Sakuya, but not for HS. On March 24th, he had broken the 3 billion threshold with Reimu B on Lunatic, making it the second category to ever hit that milestone. I'd like to reiterate just how much HS contributed to PCB as a whole, with various records and milestones, as well as finding most of the strats that made them possible to begin with. And come November 15th of the same year, with his new record for Marissa A. Hard, HS would hold the world record for all 36 categories. "2011 came to an end, and some of those records started changing ownership. But nothing was happening for Lunatic. 2012 was the same story. Another quiet year for the difficulty as a whole. 2013's winter wrapped up, and summer wasn't too far off. But still, no activity. HS was the first player to have ever cracked 3 billion, and nearly 5 years later, he remained as the only one to ever do so. No major route changes meant you just had to play better than the guy who broke 3 billion in 2 different categories, and at one point held every world record. No big deal, right? Well, come spring, someone rose to that challenge. 32 months later, on May 5th, a 3.17 billion, submitted by the player, Naya. The majority of the route is unchanged, and he had a perfect early game. The only difference is Naya's decision to bomb during Letty's second non. This changed his bomb count for stage 3, and he wasn't able to use a bomb on the second mid-boss, resulting in a late border post-mid, and no place to refill before the boss. He reintroduces the Graze save spot on non 1, and clears at the end, as the dolls only drop power, so he can get back to max without losing any point items. He accidentally breaks his border on the final, and the return Cherry Plus means he doesn't need to use a bomb to get into Stage 4 opener range. Stage 4's boss is where the route does differ. Divine Performance uses 2 bombs to get to border, and before the border ends, he breaks it. The break allows for another border with just 1 bomb, and he does it again to get 3 borders, completing the third one. This sacrifices a life and a capture bonus in exchange for more Cherry Max from the multiple borders. In this case, Naya got 53,000, while HS got 26,000. Stage 5 takes a death to Hungry King's sword, which causes him to start the boss with 3 bombs. He doesn't get a border on Hell God's sword, but uses all his bombs on the second non. Stage 6 opts to not use any bombs during Yuko's first non, and uses the older strat for Hirokawa. Resurrection Butterfly has yet another variation, bombing into a border and completing it twice. Then the next 2 bombs into 2 breaks, with the 5th border being completed. A strong run with a little variation up until the mid-game. The last 2 runs HS had gotten 7 captures into Stage 4, but these runs had hiccups prior to Orleans, so it's possible this capture was only a backup. Assuming Naya's bomb in Stage 1 was the plan from the start, the 7 captures were routed back in at the cost of a border on Alice. Stage 4 was definitely the strongest stage in the run, with a strong opener and solid execution throughout, and the new strat on Divine Performance making its world record debut. The only major mistake made was taking a hit to Hungry King's sword, and even then Naya was able to continue Stage 5 as HS had a few runs ago, with the bomb dump on Non 2. Alongside that, Stage 4 had a lower bonus from Live Poltergeist, and a weaker and more old-fashioned Stage 6, with no bombs on Non 1, lower grazes from Butterfly Delusion and Hirokawa respectively, and an interesting strat on Resurrection Butterfly. It's likely this strat was his plan from the start, which would explain his decision to not use any bombs on Non 1. Naya had become the second player to break 3 billion, and had a world record to show for it. With the lack of major mistakes, and only real route change being against Lyrica, it was getting even more difficult than it already had been to take the record. That proved true as 2013 ended without any changes. But outside Sakuya B, something else was stirring. Or I guess it would be more accurate to say, someone. February 28th, 2014. A new world record had been set. A 3.2 billion by the player, Yusuke. But there was something a little different about this record. For starters, the character used was not Sakuya B, and instead it was Reimu B. See, Yusuke's earliest appearances on the record board were from 2012, where he was playing mostly Phantasm, and around mid-2013, he started grinding Reimu B Lunatic. It became the second player to break 3 billion for the character, and the third to break 3 billion in general. This 3.2 billion was the first time Sakuya B hadn't held the overall world record in the game since Assapin's 2.2 billion nearly 10 years ago. Unfortunately, since this run is Reimu B, I won't be going over it. But don't worry, this won't be the last time you hear the name Yusuke. The difference was about 45 million, a respectable amount for sure, but not unbeatable. And on August 10th, Naya responded. A new world record of 3.62 billion. He only had to beat Yusuke by 45 million, but he went for an extra zero on that total, beating Yusuke by 450 million. Sadly, no replay of this massive improvement exists, so one can only wonder what changed to allow that much of an increase. Yusuke spent the rest of 2014 improving his Phantasm records, and was still grinding Reimu B. 2015 was going fast, and Yusuke was still dedicated to Reimu. He even went as far as to break 3 billion with Reimu A, making him the first and only person to do so to this day. His runs were getting better and better, but they still weren't enough to catch Naya. 2016 was now less than a day away, when Yusuke had submitted a new run. He decided to welcome the new year with a new record, a 3.64 billion. Once again, it's Reimu B, and this run marked Yusuke's retirement from the category, having pushed it to its limits. Yusuke finally turned his attention to Sakuya B, and in less than 3 months, on March 9th, he had beaten his Reimu B PB with a 3.66 billion. Now it is a little unfair to compare this run to Naya's 3.17 billion, but it's the most recent available replay in the category, so it's the best I can do. Even with this being the case, the early game remains mostly the same, with changes at stage 1, where the bomb during letting on 2 sets up for an early border on the final, letting him graze the source of the bullets at the start, and the end of stage 2, where he did a new Graze strat on Goho and captured the final. Now he has an extra bomb into stage 3. He does the spin graze during the second mid-non before and during his border, then uses the extra bomb on the post-mid section, giving an earlier border and letting him refill before the boss, instead of during. This also lets him get the same amount of borders on the first non with half the bombs, so he has 2 to use on Orleans, getting him an extra border during the spell card. The border break is avoided on the final, and is captured. On stage 4, he does the later, riskier break on the second border, and doesn't stall his final border with a bomb, instead delaying his point of collection grab of a cherry item to proc the border. He also delays the third border on the post-lily section, which doesn't lose any of the red graze, and lets him take the border further into the next section. Merlin Non 1 has a new border graze strat now, and the bomb he saved by not delaying the opener is used on Merlin's second non. This also means he didn't have to refill on the first non. Live Poltergeist opens with a very aggressive graze before returning to the standard. This combined with better overall grazing got Yusuke over 1500 graze, more than double what Naya had gotten. Divine Performance is where that extra bomb is really put to use. With a refill when it starts, he can now use all 4 bombs for his 3 borders. With the increased Cherry Plus from unfocused shooting, Yusuke gets his border from the final during it, instead of from the clear. He takes his refill early into stage 5, and it lets him get a border at the right spot without a bomb, saving yet another one. He ends up taking a hit to Hungry King's sword just like Naya did, losing the extra bombs he had saved. He gets a border during Hell God's sword, instead of at the start of Non 2, and even though the amount of bombs used is the same, Yusuke is just short of a second border here, and ends up getting it at the start of Asura's sword, losing most of the clear increase to his Cherry Plus. It's not possible to get a border on the final, and he takes a hit during it. His Cherry Plus is high enough to get a border before Chaos, letting him do the border break here, even though the refill came earlier than he wanted and cost a bonus. He ends up getting the next border before the mid, losing it for the non. The 3 bombs for 2 borders on Yuyuko's first non is re-implemented, and losing Hometown has a new graze method. This was actually done by Naya, but he had stopped when his border ended. Butterfly Delusion sees over 3800 graze alone, and at the end of the spell card, you can see that the game has a hard time displaying a bonus higher than 100 million. Don't worry though, it still counts it properly. This happens again during Hirokawa, as Yusuke manages over 4200 graze here with the newer strat that Naya didn't use. Resurrection Butterfly is captured with the same strat HS had used to capture it, and thanks to Yusuke's much higher cherry, the capture bonus comes out to over 50 million. A big theme of this run is newer, stronger, and crazier Graze strats. See, Yusuke was known for coming out with high difficulty Graze strats. He was also known for his incredible Graze ability, which let him pull off these strats in full runs. But I'm sure you've already noticed that. Most, if not all, the new Graze strats displayed here were created by Yusuke, and were used in his Reimu B records. So while they aren't necessarily new, it is the first time we're seeing them used for Sakuya B. Aside from the grazing, he did have some other variations with his decisions to not bomb the Stage 2 and 3 finals, and at the end of the Stage 4 opener. But the places he ended up using those saved bombs were worth the change. Up until Youyoumu. The loss of the bonus to the final was unfortunate, and it caused him to both lose some item value and his border for the Stage 6 mid. The real tragedy of the run was the hit to Hungry King's sword, as it took a life he very much wanted to keep to the end. That this run managed this many high-risk strats and only suffered one real mistake says a lot about Yusuke's skill as a player. Even with this incredible run under his belt, he was far from done with Sakuya, as just 3 months later, Yusuke submitted a new run that improved on his record by 33 million. This run further polished the Graze of both the early and mid-game, and took many opportunities to get as much extra as possible. This really shows as he exited Stage 3 with 833,000 Cherry Max, a record-breaking achievement on its own. It isn't until Merlin where things take a negative turn, as he gets hit during her first non. This doesn't change his route though. He still uses 2 bombs on non 2, then refills at the start of Divine Performance. He goes into Stage 5 with 1 less life, but avoids getting hit by Hungry King's sword. This actually puts his resources back on par with his previous PB going into the boss. Hellgod's sword is cleared just a smidge too early, and loses a lot of Cherry Plus as a result. This low gain means he's unable to get a border during the second non off just 1 bomb, so he has to bomb twice. This also means he can't get a second border here, as he doesn't have enough bombs, and he opts to just not use it. This makes his next border happen during Human God's sword, and unfortunately, sometime after it ends, he gets hit again. He moves after the clear to get full power, but misses the big P and has to chase it. This loses him some item value. He does end up getting a border during the final though. Stage 6 uses a different strat during Chaos, where he uses a focus bomb and hangs around the upper center, giving him full item value, and a border when it ends. His border is broken as usual, and he enters the mid-boss with low enough Cherry Plus to get his next border during it. He takes a hit to losing Hometown after his border, and gets hit again afterwards, losing 2 lives and the bonus. This was a huge loss, as he loses 40 million from those lives, the capture bonus, which in his previous PV was 16 million, and a chunk of Cherry that would increase his bonuses and point item value. Despite this, the rest of Yuiko goes exceptionally well, and Resurrection Butterfly sees a new implementation. By using the invincibility period after a border ends, you can run through the blue and purple butterflies to where they spawn, grazing a huge amount of them. Then, with good movement, you can also graze a bunch of the red butterflies as you exit the inner circle. This strat was found by Yusuke in October of 2015, where he showcased the strat in a video, showing it was possible to get 4,500 graze out of it. He got over 3,000 graze here, where his previous run had gotten just over 1,700. Much like last time, this run had so many strong areas, a few hiccups, then one area that ended up being costly. Also, much like last time, it didn't take very long before Yusuke would upload a better run. But unlike last time, it didn't take 3 months for an improvement to be made. It only took a day. Yusuke's new run was a score of 3.72 billion, another difference of around 30 million. His early game goes the same, albeit a slightly weaker gain on the first Stage 2 border. Stage 4 has a break on the 3rd border during the post-Lily section, but the rest of the stage goes well. The boss goes well as well, but due to a weak cancel on non 1, he's unable to get a border at the start of the first spell, so he doesn't do the note graze. Stage 5 this time is flawless, and he's able to get 6 borders on the boss fight, with the last one coming from the clear on the final. This was the goal of the previous 2 runs, but with the Cherry Plus route being so tight, even a small error throws it off. Losing Hometown is captured with no issues. His border comes a bit late on non 2, and he refrains from shooting during it. He does end up taking a hit after the border, but since it's a non-spell, he doesn't lose a huge bonus on top of the life and points. Sumezome doesn't take a hit, but he misses the extra border, as he got the Cherry Plus required on the shot that captured the spell. He wraps the run up with an even stronger display of the Resurrection Butterfly strat he performed last time as well. Another great run with minimal mistakes, and it had hit a new milestone. With the score getting higher and higher, it became a wonder just how high a human could take it. Currently, 3.7 billion was possible, but the level of execution required for it was insanely high. If you wanted to go higher than that, you need to pull off multiple high-risk strats, on top of everything else throughout the run. Of course, this was the same story for previous scores, and that didn't deter Yusuke from reaching this point. If anyone was to go beyond, it would likely have been him. It was a safe bet to make. The real payout would come from the when, not the who, as once again, Yusuke submitted another new record, not even a month after the last. His previous records had been a modest increase of around 30 million. This time, just an increase of around 130 million, breaking yet another milestone with a 3.85 billion. Stage 1 and 2 were picture perfect, no mistakes or anything. Stage 3 is largely the same. The only thing is a slightly later border at the start, which made his Cherry Max 832,000, just shy of his all-time best going into Stage 4. Stage 4 was nearly perfect, an incredibly strong opener, successful third border on the post-lily section, and able to do the note Graze during the first spell card. At this point, Yusuke is pulling off over 10,000 Graze in this stage alone, capping his end of stage Graze bonus. Another flawless Stage 5. And once again, he pulls off the 6-border Youyoumu fight. Yusuke uses a different strat on Yuyuko's first non, using focus bombs instead of unfocused. This is the same amount of Cherry Plus, but gains an additional 7 to 8 million per bomb. The risk of this strat is due to the focused bombs lasting longer, as to get your 2 border bonuses this way without losing Cherry Plus from the clear, you have to finish on 0 seconds. Missing this cuts your Cherry by 25%. A potential huge loss this late into the run. The only thing left to correct from the last run is the extra border from Sumezome, but before he gets it, he takes a hit. This lost about 4 million from his resource bonus, and his capture bonus, which last run was 16 million, and that was without the extra border and lower Cherry. This miss also affected Resurrection Butterfly, turning some of the Cherry items into power, preventing him from getting his first border in time for the invincible Graze. A near perfect run. Not much else you can really say there. He just played super well and executed his strats nearly flawlessly. The absolute heartbreaker of it all though was the hit on Sumezome, effectively costing around 50 million. A loss that could have skipped the 3.8 billion and go right to the 3.9 billion. Of course, this run was, as I said, near perfect. So to get a run back to this loss on pace and correct it would actually be a perfect run. This requirement didn't stop Yusuke before, so it wasn't going to be any different this time. But how much further could he truly push it? The summer of 2016 was huge for Sakuya, but the rest of the year fell silent, and this silence persisted for some time. Yusuke would have some sporadic replays of individual stages throughout, but no new runs. 2017 was the same for PCB, but not Sakuya herself, as Yusuke would utilize the maid in a different game, getting the world record for Scarlet Team in Imperishable Night. As time went on, the same story applied, although Yusuke had started doing runs in the other lunatic categories, getting the records for all 6 lunatic categories, as Hasega did so long ago. Yusuke had gotten every shot type in the difficulty over 3 billion. And he's currently the only person to ever do this for Reimu A, Marissa A and B, and Sakuya A. Time marched on, and no changes came. That 3.85 billion was extremely good, and withstanding the test of time. There were other players breaking 3 billion in the category now, but as it stood, the only players to pass 3.6 were Naya and Yusuke. By the end of 2019, Yusuke had only submitted one new full Sakuya B run, a 3.83 billion on June 17th. Not a new PB, but still an insanely good score. However, it's not the score itself that's interesting, it's what he did to get it. This run features a number of new strats, and even a different early game route. This route uses 2 bombs on Letty's final for an extra border, and breaks it to return the Cherry Plus to as it would be on the other route, to keep the first border on stage 2. He takes his first refill on Chen's first non, and uses more bombs to get an extra border on the first spell card. This route was created by Yusuke, and is an increase of around 50 million over the other one. The major risk of this route is that it forces a 6 captures stage 4, which makes the stage very difficult to pull off. Alice uses a different timing on the refill during the third non that lets him use the invincibility period to get a safe spot Graze similar to the first non-safe spot. Speaking of Alice, it's actually possible to get 9 borders on this fight, but doing so forfeits all 4 spell bonuses. And if you're wondering why he doesn't just skip a border here to avoid a 6 capture stage 4, well, the extra borders stop being extra when you remove a border elsewhere, right? Merlin has a different Graze on non 1, and a new spin Graze during border on non 2. He also now grazes the notes longer, getting the green set along with the red. The big difference here is during Divine Performance. Using focus bombs, he sets up timing for invincibility to get to the center of the bullet circle to graze all the yellow bullets, then follows them out. This is done 3 times, with intentional breaks on all 3 borders. He also starts grazing the red bullets from within the circle they form. This was always possible, but never done as it's super tight. The final change is a new method to stage 6 chaos, a bomb into a double border break. The bomb gives more score than the full power clear, and the double break recovers the lost cherry to the bomb penalty while putting it high enough for the next border to activate during the mid. By the end of the run, Yusuke had shown a bonus breaking Resurrection Butterfly and a total graze amount of over 40,000. These were the new changes to the route, and despite the mistakes throughout this run, it was only about 20 million off his previous PB, which only had 1 mistake itself. In other words, it was no longer a matter of a perfect run being the only thing capable of setting a new record. Of course, these additions were, for the most part, even more difficult strats to pull off than previously. So in a way, you still need to be perfect. Fortunately, Yusuke is a bit of a perfectionist, so this didn't change his approach. He continued to grind for that 3.9 billion. 9 months later, after showcasing his potential gains, he was finally able to beat his previous record. A 3.9 billion was finally achieved. Well, not exactly. See, Yusuke played a bit better than that. 4 billion. A score so high that it didn't seem humanly possible to pull off. And here, Yusuke not only did it, but he skipped a whole 100 million to do it. Right away, something of note is that he didn't go for his alternate early game route. Stage 3 does have a couple border breaks, but he manages to get the 9 border Alice fight. This 9 border route allows him to match his all-time highest cherry max out of stage 3 at 833,000, despite the 2 breaks during the stage. And because he didn't use his other route, he's going into stage 4 with 7 captures. Stage 4 has a small change at the start, using the full power convert to keep the newly formed cherry items on screen just a bit longer. Even though it misses border, he's so close to it that he loses nothing getting it from the little shooting he does. He does a new strat on the first set of red fairies near the end, utilizing Sakuya B's ability to hit both in front and to the side at the same time, making it much easier to shoot down all 4. Lastly, he uses a bomb on the final fairy to bring his cherry plus up for the boss. He nails all the new strats on the fight, amounting to a 31 million capture bonus on live poltergeist, and a cherry increase of around 119,000 on divine performance. This was around 35,000 more cherry than his previous record, and that had a border bonus here. He uses a focus bomb on the last section of stage 5, and Youyoumu has an accidental break on non 2, which results in the next border showing up on a Sura sword. These don't make much of a difference, but he does get hit and lose his bonus on Heaven God Sword. Stage 6 uses the bomb double break on Chaos once more, along with the focus bomb 0-second clear on Yuyuko's first non. He even starts the spin strat on Butterfly Delusion in a different spot. This is considerably harder to perform, and only amounts to roughly 100 extra graze. The entire Yuyuko fight goes perfect, with huge gains where expected, and no misses of any kind. And the run is capped off with another bonus-breaking capture of Resurrection Butterfly. And this is where the record stands today. This was an incredible run that used plenty of difficult strats, and even some small, almost negligible increases. But to Yusuke, any potential increase was worth going for. This run wasn't without its mistakes though. Those 2 breaks on stage 3, and the miss to Heaven God Sword stick out. But prior to all these new strats, the only way it seemed possible to beat 3.85 billion was a perfect run. And this run broke it by 150 million. This run also didn't use the other early game strat. What this all means is that even though 4 billion has been achieved, it's still possible to go higher. A 4.1 billion is certainly possible, and a perfect run with Yusuke's 6 capture early game route could even potentially crack 4.2. I don't doubt that Yusuke himself will continue to push this game to its absolute limits, but he's certainly not alone. New players continue to pick up the game even after all these years, which is a testament to how enjoyable and rewarding the scoring experience is in this game. Throughout the game's history, new players would show up and take the records for themselves, only to be beaten by new players again and again. Maybe one of these new players will someday overtake Yusuke, or maybe Yusuke himself will produce the ultimate run that one could only ever hope to match. One thing's for certain though, Perfect Cherry Blossom is still far from seeing its perfect score. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.